So this is going to be for a scene where we have characters go over the bridge, right? But there needs to be this roaring river underneath them and these huge mountain cliffs. And right now I don't feel like those mountain cliffs are feeling huge enough. So once you have your 5 layers in there, and here's my foreground, you can kind of start moving them around and using your transform controls. So even though this goes beyond my sketch, you can always go bigger than your sketch, right? I might hit Command T, hold down Shift and stretch this a little bit. I might put my tree on top of it, of those river rocks, and bring that down and kind of in those rocks. It's kind of what I was thinking. Like there. I might Command T the tree, and I might even do something like distort it so that it looks heavier at the base. I might stretch out the base. Organic material is great to composite with because it's so flexible. Maybe even tilt it. And I like that shadow on the rocks, right? And I can cut out this tree a little bit more now, so I get a sense of what's behind it. Like all this greenery. Or I can make use of it, right? But I know I want the rocks to kind of come through on this edge. So I can just delete because these are rasterized, right? So now I have rocks in a tree, but they're from different layers. And they don't match great, but they're close. And then I know I want the river as well, but maybe I want this grass from the tree layer to kind of really sell these Aesop's Fables textures, which are a lot of brambles and bushes. And again, just kind of rough cuts. But now I'm just roughly lassoing and deleting. So I can get a sense of where that horizon line is, where that river is. Then I can reveal more of the rocks. And there is a problem of people in a boat, but I'll show you how to fix that when we need to. Then what about back here? I like that little bramble. I think all of that's okay, but this can go. And then how can I select this blue and try to get rid of it on this tree layer instead of having to lasso around even roughly? Because I could do a rough cut around all of these spiny tree aspects like that and delete. But there is a selection tool besides the lasso that we're practicing, and that's right underneath the lasso. It's the magic wand. So with contiguous turned on, just because I really want to see the tree and I want to see this cliffside and the work I need to do, I'm going to click on the blue, and I'm going to have contiguous checked, so it's only going to select blue pixels that are touching the blue pixels where I click. And I have a tolerance of 12, which is pretty low. The lower the number, the more picky the selection is going to be. So sure enough, at 12 when I click, it only touches there. But if I move it up to the default in Photoshop, which is 32, it gets a little bit bigger. And there you see it cuts it out. Not too bad. I can hold down Shift and I can add to it. Hold down Shift and add to it. Hold down Shift and add to it. Now I'm going to get little artifacts of blue, but this will give me a sense of what the rocks behind this tree are doing. So it's taking out all of this sky. All right. Oh, and then over here as well. Just using that magic wand. And now I'm going to hit delete, and it will just give me a really strong cutout. You can see that kind of blue halo. But if before I hit delete, I hit select and mask, I don't want to feather it too much because that softens the edge, and this is near the foreground, but I do want to shift the edge towards the positive percentage. And I wanted a radius of maybe like 3 pixels. And you can see it shift. All right, so when I say OK, now I can see that the selection is moved closer. And it's feathered just slightly. So when I hit delete, I get less of that blue artifact. There's still some, and that will be able to be gotten rid of. But that gives me a sense of that tree now floating on top of this cliffside. And if that's going to work, if that tree is a good kind of transitional element. I can also do it with all this gray hillside around the tree, but because that has more contrast, right? My magic wand is going to have a harder time isolating it. And if I'm not careful, I'm going to end up with lots of little artifacts that look like camouflage. So there's a time to use the magic wand for selections and a time just to use your lasso. But when it's open sky, like kind of easy, similar pixels, the magic wand works great to select. But I'm just trying to figure out my placement and my sizes. And this is working pretty well, but my bridge needs to be a little bit bigger, or this element needs to change. So I'm just kind of putting things in the right place. This is a good candidate for the magic wand. This reference layer with contiguous at 32. Just select these sky shapes and get rid of them. So they're nice and clean. There we go. Because what I really want are those kind of trees at the ridge. So now it looks like there's a mountain. And then there's this bridge. Now let's go to that bridge layer. And I'm going to select with the magic wand the sky around it, just so I can see the mountains in the far background. Now if I get rid of it completely, it's going to be a little weird, but what I can do is I can actually use the magic wand to select it and to stencil it. So now that it's selected, I can use a new tool that I have not taught before, though many of you found it useful in compositing before, and that's the eraser tool. Now the eraser tool is different than delete. Delete will just get rid of all pixels in your selection. The eraser tool is like an eraser, and the difference is it's like a paintbrush that erases, and you can set it to be either hard or soft. What I want to teach you to do is to use a 0% hardness eraser and to make its size quite big, whether you're using a tablet or not. I'm going to take its opacity also up to 100%. So now when I use the eraser on this selection, it's going to do what's called ghosting. And it's going to obliterate that hard edge, which is what I'm trying to get rid of, and reveal the mountains behind. But because it's a 0% hardness on its edge, it's going to automatically kind of blend with what's around it. And it will not get rid of the bridge, no matter what I do, no matter how much I erase, because it can only erase in the area that I have selected. And I can take that, and I can also, once I've gotten rid of the hard edge, which I have now gotten rid of, right? So what was, before I used the eraser, really sharp, is now fully erased at that edge, so I can deselect, and I can see that. Now that I've gotten rid of the hard edge, I can use that selection, and I can now do a lower opacity, like maybe 30% eraser, to turn this into mist instead of heavy clouds. And that helps blend it all as well. There's people I need to get rid of. So now that's one way of I'm just erasing enough so it reveals these layers together. And then I have my sky. And then I'm going to reveal this sky and that skyline. So I'm going to go to that back edge. And then this back edge, which isn't even showing. So I need to move this one up if I want it to be used, which is why you want to turn off auto select. So when you select a layer, you are holding on to it, whether you can find it or not. And I want to bring those mountains in. And maybe even make my composition taller than it is. All right. And now with these different layers, I'm going to use that magic wand. I'm just going to let that overlap happen. I'm going to use select and mask. And this time, because I've been doing the same kind of thing each time, I've been a radius of a couple pixels, a shifting edge of about 30%. And now that I'm in the background, I'm going to do a slight feather. I'm going to check on remember these settings. So every time I use refine edge, it's going to remember those settings. It's going to refine my selection. So when I delete, it will automatically kind of soften and bite. And the reason I love refine edge is the more you hit delete, the more it will bite away at those pixels and kind of extend it. So you decide how soft it should be. And then still at little times, you need to cut things out. That's how we'll do refined cutouts. But I'm not even trying to do full refined cutouts yet. I'm just trying to see all my layers and place them. So this is looking pretty good. Now, let's go to this layer and get rid of that white sky in the same way. I'm going to use select and mask. It's going to remember my settings. Say OK, and then I'm going to hit delete, and it's going to soften it. There we go. All right, now's a good time to save. So far in this project, I have brought reference images in. Think of them like magazine pages. And I've done rough cuts of them. And now I've done kind of careful placing of those, using the digital tools to stretch them, to kind of place them. And it has changed from a narrow concept, which was my original sketch. This was my sketch. If I unlock it, I'll take it up to 100%. And all those components. But because I want those mountains to look really tall and that bridge to look really scary, right? It helped to just use the reference and to make it taller. So you can go beyond your sketch. You just don't want to go smaller than your sketch. So at this point, now that I've kind of framed it in, I'm going to move my guides to where I think the bottom of my image should be. And I'm going to move my guides to where the top of my image should be, which should still probably be pretty clear. And now I'm going to crop it, but not super close to the edge. I'm going to crop it a little bit closer to my guides, just to save memory. And now this looks like kind of a cool Polaroid collage project, right? But it's got some obvious things that don't match. Now, before I do really clean cutouts, I'm going to show you my favorite tools. And my favorite tools are going to be matching the lighting and the color. And you want to do that before you do careful cutouts. And we'll start class with that, but I want to introduce it here. So if you have time to play with it between now and Monday, you're going to like playing with this. If you need to find more reference that you enjoy more, you can definitely continue working on this. You just save it as a PSD file, put it on your thumb drive, and continue it in PhotoP. So how can I play with the color? Well, I'm going to first save my work. I can turn off the onion skin and like just delete it. I don't need it anymore. This is now my composition. It is completely my own composition. It is not at all reliant on any one image more than any other, right?